Thor: Love and Thunder is out in theaters, and with its arrival, we welcome Christian Bale into the loving arms of our MCU tribe. Gorr is a relatively new villain within Thor's pantheon of rogues, with most of his heavy hitters making their debut decades ago. Gorr finds himself as kind of the new kid on the block, only making his debut in comics less than a decade ago. Well, I guess it could be longer depending upon when you're watching this video, but today we are going to cover the complete comic history of one of the most truly terrifying villains that ever came to blows with the God of Thunder. This is the complete history of Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr made his comic book debut in Thor: God of Thunder 2, written by Jason Aaron and drawn by Esad Ribic. Thor: God of Thunder is a pretty unique run and at times can be a bit confusing. It's told over 3 distinct time periods that all combine for a massive battle across space and time, and to best understand it, let me give you a little bit of a primer. The story itself is told through the vantage point of Thor at 3 different points in his life. First, we have Thor of the past, an arrogant young Thor not yet worthy of wielding Mjolnir but without his fair share of accomplishments. This Thor is reckless, headstrong, and eager to prove himself in battle. Second, we have Thor the Avenger, an older, wiser Thor who wields the full power of Mjolnir and has been on many adventures with his comrades in the Marvel Universe. For all intents and purposes, you can think of this as the modern Thor. And lastly, we have Thor the Allfather, or Old King Thor, a Thor from the not-too-distant future who's one of the last remaining gods. Old King Thor wields the Thor Force, the magical power passed down from Odin to the King of Asgard. He's the last remaining god of Asgard trapped there for all eternity, and we'll discuss why that is in a moment. So, the story of Thor's clash with Gorr takes place over 3 different time periods, but in order for it to make the most sense, I'm going to tell you each of them one by one. So you can check the timestamps on the screen now to jump to whichever Thor you want, or you could just watch the whole video like a normal person. But before we begin, I'm going to give you the backstory of Gorr before he actually met the Thunder God. Gorr's origin is told in Thor: God of Thunder number 6, where he was born on an unnamed planet some 3,000 years ago. The planet itself was extremely harsh. His mother was a deeply religious person who prayed to her world's gods, yet had basically the worst life you can imagine. She ended up dying defending Gorr from sand tigers as he ran away like a wuss. As an adult, Gorr had a wife and multiple children, but life was hard. Consistently unable to find food, they struggled to survive. One day, Gorr's wife died in a quake while pregnant, and as the following months came and went, Gorr's remaining children died of heat or starvation. Yeah, not a lot of laughs in this story. After burying the last of his children underground, which was viewed as a sin, Gorr defied his people and cursed the gods, which led to him being outcast. Left alone and on the brink of death, he witnessed 2 beings crash land into the planet. At this point, Gorr realized that gods were actually real, and it seems as if they had forsaken him. 2 gods lay in the crater, one in black and one in gold. The black-armored god was seemingly dead, and the golden god was alive but just barely clinging to life. The golden god begged Gorr for help, and Gorr snapped. Gorr killed the remaining golden god, who he could not believe would dare to beg somebody with such a horrible life for help after forsaking them in all of their prayers his entire life. The black-armored god's weapon became sentient and clung to Gorr, giving him tremendous strength and the ability to create weapons. Gorr ended up disappearing into the cosmos for thousands of years. Now, I'm sure many of you already know who the black-armored god was and the weapon that Gorr took from him, but if you don't, stick around, we'll discuss it in a few moments. In 893 AD, young Thor led a group of 20 men into battle against a frost giant, which they were able to slay. However, during the celebration, the men found the severed head of a Native American god washed up on shore. Somehow, that god had died in battle. While concerned, Thor ends up taking 20 men across the sea to pillage and investigate the dead god. There, we get the first glimpse of Gorr, watching him from afar, and we also get the first glimpse of Gorr's thong bikini, super hot. Thor and his men arrive to find the local gods of the land have also been killed. Thor attempts to investigate and is met for the first time by Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr and Thor battle, with Gorr able to easily best the young god due to a malleable black weapon that seems to respond to Gorr's every thought. While Gorr is taunting him, Thor is able to summon lightning and blast him back, significantly hurting him and forcing him to retreat. Thor is next shown going back out looking for the hurt Gorr. He treks off in search of the God Butcher and finds the nearly dead Siberian god of the hunt, Hinkon, who points him to a cave where Gorr is believed to be. Thor tracks him down, and Gorr is able to use his black weapon to bind and torture Thor for 17 days, hoping to get information about Asgard so he could, go kill the rest of them. It seems pretty much hopeless for Thor until his men arrive, who Gorr then laments for siding with a god. However, the young Thor is able to break free of his bindings and cut Gorr's arm off, forcing him to flee again. In the present day, Thor traveled to the planet Indigar after hearing the prayers of a young girl who believed that her planet's gods had abandoned them. Thor arrived, and with him he brought tremendous rain, helping the people of the planet survive. After speaking with the young girl, he took her advice and went to investigate the homeworlds of Indigar's sky gods. Thor ends up finding all of them dead, having been killed potentially hundreds of years ago. Now, Thor isn't stupid. He's like, this seems like it's probably the work of Gorr. I haven't seen this guy in forever. Maybe he didn't die. Crap. Thor ends up traveling to a place called Omnipotent City, a 12-billion-year-old city that houses countless gods and information on them. Thor ends up requesting information on any god who had gone missing and not been heard of for thousands of years, so he goes off investigating them, and one by one he finds the slaughtered corpses of long-dead gods. Eventually, Thor's quest takes him back to the cave that he had first battled Gorr in long ago. There, instead of Gorr, he finds Shadrach, a god who was once tortured by Gorr but escaped and no longer remembers what he was the god of, as he was driven mad. Thor returns to Omnipotent City and finds it under attack and learns that he has to travel to a place called Chronux, a hidden planet overseen by time gods. There, he finds Gorr. Gorr has been spending the last 1,000 years or so getting significantly stronger and doing what he does best, just killing gods and space vibing. Gorr ends up using the time pools on this planet to travel to the beginning of creation to slay an elder god and claim his heart. When Thor starts to find out about the Butcher's plans, Gorr ends up sending him into the far future where, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Far into the future, we find King Thor, a tired old man desperately trapped in an endless cycle of attempting to fight his way through a nearly endless barrage of black berserkers. These sentient servants of Gorr serve as a nearly endless horde of guard dogs designed to keep the King Thor on this ruined Asgard. The remaining Asgardians were taken by Gorr 900 years ago, never to have been seen again, and are presumed dead. Every time King Thor attempts to flee, he's beaten back and left to regain his strength so he can attempt it again and again, an endless cycle of failure playing out over hundreds of years, until one day, Thor Odin, son of the present, arrived, having been sent into the future by Gorr accidentally. The two Thors are able to finally overcome the Black Berserkers, and they leave Asgard in search of Gorr's black planet. Alright, now is about the time when everything starts to connect, so from this point on we're going to be pretty much in the same timeline, 900 years into the future of this parallel dimension. When King Thor and Avenger Thor arrive on Gorr's world, they find that he's been working on a massive weapon called the God Bomb, created by Shadrax, who's revealed to have been the god of bombs, which is an oddly specific thing to be a god of. This bomb is made out of the heart of an infant elder god, the black weapon Gorr commands, and the cores of dying stars and other insanely rare materials designed to, when detonated, kill every god across all of space and time. Additionally, young Thor was plucked by Gorr from his timeline and made to be a slave on Gorr's world, helping to mine resources and complete the construction of the bomb. Thor ends up meeting Gorr's son, who he speaks with at length about the nature of gods and learns a bit about why Gorr hates them so much. It's also revealed that Gorr has a wife whom desperately also wishes to see the end of all gods as well. It's also there that young Thor finds his far future, alternate timeline granddaughters who have been working in secret for hundreds of years to build their own smaller bomb. Young Thor ends up stealing their bomb in an attempt to blow up the god bomb himself, however blasts himself into the ship carrying the other two Thors, which is probably the most convenient thing that could have happened. The three Thors launch into a battle against Gorr, and despite the tremendous power of the Thor force, Mjolnir, and Jarnborn, they three are eventually dispatched by Gorr, whose power grows as he kills the remaining god slaves he's kept on his world. King Thor is strapped to a comet and flung into space, Avenger Thor is thrown into the planet's core, and young Thor is carried by Gorr to the God Bomb as a sacrifice to cause the explosion. However, along the way to the God Bomb, Gorr's wife exclaimed her love for Gorr one last time, showering him with praise, and she ends up making the mistake of saying that Gorr was her own personal god, a line that infuriates him to the point that he ends up killing her for it. Gorr's son arrives shortly after and sees his mother being absorbed into the planet, or so it seemed at the time. I'll explain what actually happens in a minute. Gorr begins the process of detonating the God Bomb, but his son arrives to witness Avenger Thor attempting to reach the bomb. He realizes his father had become the thing he wanted to destroy most and decides reluctantly to pray to Thor. All gods across space and time begin to die, but at the same time they see a vision of one god fighting to save them, Thor. Every god across space and time begins to pray to Thor, and in a move of absolute badassery, Thor absorbs the blast of the God Bomb into himself. When the smoke clears, we find that he has absorbed Gorr's black weapon, known as All Black the Necrosword, the original symbiote once used by the eldritch god of symbiotes Null to enslave the entire universe. Thor uses the weapon to blast Gorr into a position of helplessness. Gorr is confronted by his son, who's revealed to be just another manifestation of himself, along with his long-dead wife. Deep down, Gorr knew he needed to be stopped, and the manifestation of his son was what helped trigger his own downfall, in dubbing him the god of hypocrisy. Left alone, Gorr was decapitated and killed by young Thor. All three Thors eventually recover from the battle, with King Thor burning All Black the Necrosword out of Avenger Thor and hurling the weapon and the world into a black hole. The three Thors returned to their respective timelines and eventually forgot about the battle. That is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. No, I'm kidding. Actually, Gorr is about to become insanely powerful, so definitely stick around and watch the rest of the video. While the battle was over, the ramifications of Gorr left behind thoughts of doubt in Thor's mind. The idea that gods were not worthy of the power that they held and did not deserve to be prayed to by mortals. During the crossover event, Original Sin, Nick Fury whispers into Thor's ear, Gorr was right, which immediately causes Thor to lose his worthiness and become unable to wield Mjolnir. This left the door open for Jane Foster to become Thor for a period of time, something we'll cover in far greater detail in her video. But Thor does eventually regain Mjolnir and his worthiness. A few years later, writer Jason Aaron decided to end his time on Thor with another story focused around Gorr the God Butcher. Jason had done over 100 issues of various Thor titles, including Mighty Thor, War of the Realms, and a second Thor series. In 2019, Aaron ended his time with the character with King Thor, a follow-up miniseries. Now, I'm not going to cover the entire history of All Black the Necrosword, there are other videos of that out there, but for the purposes of this video, the All Black came to consume Galactus for a period of time, and then Ego the Living Planet, and then it eventually came to be in the possession of Loki, who was rechristened as Loki the All Butcher, or Loki the Necro God. King Thor was resting in Asgard when he was attacked by Loki infused with All Black. Thor and Loki's battle raged across the ruins of old Asgard, New Midgard, and even the sun. Loki was thrown into the sun, which turned into a black star and was nearly able to kill Thor before he was stabbed in the back by Gorr, our buddy, back from the dead. Loki had resurrected Gorr from his semi-unconscious thoughts that we'll discuss in a minute, but Gorr's entire consciousness had been trapped inside of All Black for eons. Loki chose to resurrect Gorr to do something he himself could not do: kill himself. Loki was trying to kill King Thor, and Gorr was to kill Loki, but Gorr betrayed him and planned to destroy all of existence. King Thor, his granddaughters, Loki, and the reawakened sky gods of the planet Indigar we discussed earlier all fought Gorr to a near standstill. One of those granddaughters was able to even decapitate him, but Gorr's consciousness had already been merged with All Black. Gorr simply took it one step farther, and he merged all black with the fabric of the cosmos and became all black the cosmos. Or in short, Gorr essentially became everything, everywhere, all at once. Gorr manifests a massive black hole to swallow King Thor once and for all, and would have been successful if not for Loki. Loki was able to distract Gorr by reciting every heroic deed that Thor had ever accomplished. This ended up distracting Gorr momentarily. Thor, in a last-ditch move, used the full might of the god of hammers that lives within Mjolnir, the god Tempest, to burn all black from the fabric of the universe, essentially ending the threat of Gorr forever. However, somehow, after the battle, Gorr was restored to life, but left as an amnesiac with childlike faculties. He was left with the sky gods of Indegard to live out the rest of his days with the one thing he always needed: love and affection. And that is it for the complete history of Gorr in the comics as it stands today. I hope you guys learned a lot about this truly terrifying villain, as he's one of the more powerful villains that Thor has ever faced. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe and do all of that crap that YouTubers ask you to do. And remember the motto: Gorr over everything.